Sometimes a short little snippet from a song can be a guitar lesson waiting to happen just inside of a song. And in this video, I want to show you a really cool flamenco phrase that I learned a long time ago. You may have heard it in a few different flamenco forms. It's very slur heavy, that's hammer-ons and pull-offs. And before I learned this phrase, I thought that I was good at hammer-ons and pull-offs, but it turns out that I was not as good as I thought. And this phrase really helped my finger independence in the left hand and also taught me some pretty cool stuff in the right hand as well. In this video, I'm going to show you that phrase, show you how to play it, and we're going to move it around and put it on different string sets to get some different sounds and even more exercise out of it. This little phrase is like a stock phrase from a soleá. I've also heard it in fandangos and some other forms as well. It's going to be an E Phrygian type of thing here, but like I said earlier, we're going to move it around and actually change the key of it and do some weird stuff. But here's the phrase. Okay, there's a lot of slurs in there, and what makes it extra hard is we have to keep some fingers down and make sure that the notes are clear and that we're on our fingertips so we don't hit the next string, so that's all very useful stuff for the left hand. But slurs are not created equal. Hammer-ons are way easier than pull-offs, I think. So a hammer-on is this, an ascending slur we would call it, just slamming it down there. But a pull-off is extra trouble, especially when we're pulling off to a fretted note, because we have to kind of pluck downwards. It's not just the opposite motion, it's the opposite idea of a hammer-on, but it's not the opposite motion. We're not just taking it off. If we do take it off, we'll still hear the note, the intended note, but we need to pluck downwards. And at that moment, this finger is going to want to come with it. So we have to have the independence in our fingers almost push against it just so the string doesn't move. But pull-offs to open strings, though, are pretty easy. Okay? And we're getting all of the above in this phrase. If we were playing a soleá that's counted in 12 beats, these will be 16th notes starting on the 7th beat and landing on the 10. And the 10 is kind of our landing point for a lot of stuff when we do this remate at the end, which we can add, and I'll add it in a second. But I'm just stopping really where the phrase ends for the purposes today, but watch. So that would be the whole thing going from 7 all the way through 12. But it doesn't matter, they're all even, so you don't have to think about what the count is. And like I said, if it's in a different form, it would be counted differently anyway. So just even 16th notes. So the harmony here is really this Phrygian sound of an F to an E chord. So hold an F like this, but put your pinky down here on a D note, and that's really our setup. So our index finger can come off. And we're going to do a forward arpeggio here. And what's cool about this for the right hand is that we're going to do normal arpeggio stuff. You could say, you know, one finger to the next, but on the way down, we're going to change our fingering and not do it like you think we should do it. Okay, so I'm going to go thumb, index, middle, ring, and then put your first finger down on this F note. And you just played your ring finger in the right hand. And so because of that, use your middle finger as kind of the next one in line. So we'll use our middle finger to play that and then pull off that open string. So even that gives people a lot of trouble because our pinky, being so weak, is going to not want to be on its fingertip. You got to train your pinky to do that. See how I'm curved on each and every knuckle here? Even this last knuckle. Got to train yourself to do that. That way we can be nice and clear of that string, and if you're not, you'll definitely hear it. So this is one of those phrases where if we can hear everything clearly, then you're doing a bunch of great stuff in the left hand. That means being on your fingertip and leaving your fingers down and everything. So watch. Did that pull off? Now my next finger is in line, and this is kind of where waiting, our fingers are waiting to be played, right? So I played my ring finger, then my middle, so the next one's the index. So I'm going to use my index on the second string, which is pretty weird, right? We started out like this, kind of in an arpeggio situation where typically we would have each finger assigned a string. So I should, you would think, play my middle finger here, but I'm not, because we kind of changed our technique idea here. Now index there, so we go. Now we have a double pull off here, and this one is super tough. Still trying to let these notes, not just keep your fingers down, but that we still should be hearing these notes. So we played that pinky note, then we pulled it off to the index finger, and the index finger was here before. We pulled it off. It's just waiting to play down here, so we could get this one a little bit early. A lot of things to think about here. We pulled off the pinky. Now we're going to pull the index finger off again to the open string, and that's what we have so far. And it's very hard to not have both of those strings sound, which, like I just did. So if you want to get extra fancy, maybe you could get over here and touch the first string to not have it ring out. But if it rings out, it's totally fine. Okay, let's add some more notes. I always found this to be actually the hardest part of the whole thing. And you wouldn't think so because now the pinky's off, which is our toughest finger, and that's out of the picture. But doing this feels really weird all the way down the tendons of my arm. Playing this A note and then pulling off to G sharp and then that F note, which we already had down. So we're not exactly done yet, but that last note is the one we started on. And then we land on the low E string. That's really the beginning of that remate thing I was talking about. So there's two ways to do this. You can play that last F note and let it ring out as you play E over it. That sounds pretty sinister and very flamenco, right? That's a flat 9, that F over the E note. Or you could just relax it there so that we don't hear it if you don't like the way that that sounds. So here's one way, leaving it down. We get those ringing out, or we can relax it. See there, I relax the finger, but I'm still touching the string, so I have control over it. And it's tricky to not have that last F note buzz while you're finishing this phrase. I like to leave the G sharp ringing out as well, so we get these two guys with that. Very much sounds like an E7 flat 9 or an E chord with a flat 9. That's an F note. Look again what's happening in the right hand. We're playing a forward arpeggio. That's thumb, index, middle, ring. Then our middle finger plays this note. We do a pull off, index, and on the way down, we're just alternating index and middle. So we have one way of playing an arpeggio, and on the way back, we're gonna go index, middle, or depending on which one you start with, middle, index, like that. It feels pretty weird to do that if you're used to doing arpeggios like this all the time. That's a great practice to do. Free strokes with index and middle. Feels pretty bizarre, but great. Now, if you have that book, Pumping Nylon, which you should have, that's a must-have book for nylon string guitarists, and any guitarist, I think, especially for the left-hand stuff. So even if you're playing with a pick, there's a lot of great stuff in there. But he's got these exercises, and you know, that's Scot who put that book together. But you know, Aaron Shearer had reach development exercises way back when. There's a bunch of books that do similar things. But we have these things where we keep all of our fingers down, for example, and then we move around like that. So this is, I mean, how long are you going to do this exercise? Because it doesn't sound good, right? I find that to be entertaining, but you probably don't. But this is kind of gets to the point of that, but it's a nice little thing to listen to, and it's a great little challenge. Fun to play, so always be on the lookout in any song that you play for something like that you have trouble with, that you can turn into its own little study or exercise, so it doesn't feel like you're playing an exercise, although you should also be doing that every day. You don't have to practice a lot. You only need to practice correctly a few minutes a day, seriously, if you do all the stuff that I'm telling you in all of my videos. But we want to make it fun and we want it to sound good, right? I think. Unless you want to punish yourself. There's cases where we need to do that sometimes, right? See, I got that buzz there accidentally on that last F note. And so you got to be really careful there. Like, are you going to keep squeezing it so it rings out? Or are you going to relax it so that it doesn't buzz? And if you're not sure either one of those, you're going to get a buzz there at the end. Another great tough thing about this phrase. Whenever I have an exercise or a lick or something, I always like to move it around just to kind of test my fingers to see, are they really getting it? Can I play this in all positions? And then move it even to other strings. And check out what happens when we do that. We're going to take that F chord, move it up 1 fret, and this gives us a very, very different sound. Check it out. Gives us the sound of the Lydian scale. And you notice I had to do something, I changed a little bit of something there, right? I'm thinking that I'm in the key of E Lydian, which is B major, the notes of B major. So in the key of B major or E Lydian, all the A's are sharp. So it's going to sound better if I modify it. So I went like this. And then instead of doing that, I'm going to stretch it out. That's another good exercise for you. If I had to pick my favorite mode, it would be Lydian. It sounds so cool. Now I'll move it up 1 fret, and check this out. I'm going to go back to the fingering of the original phrase. What does that sound like? Little E blues scale action. It would probably sound better if it went, but this is the blues scale. This F shape that we started out with, and all this funny business you can do with the slurs, you could take that to the 5th position, and you see this in flamenco very often, like a classic Alegrias or something in the key of A. And we can do a lot of the same movement here, but let's try this exact phrase. So it had an interesting sound to it. That sounded like a major blues, like we're going. At that time I landed my thumb on the A string rather than the E string because it's an A chord, so it'll sound more appropriate. So as we go up higher, it starts to challenge your fingers more, and also maybe your brain too, or the music theory part of your brain. You can go like, what sound is that? Or what really are we hearing there? But it doesn't have to sound good in order to be a good exercise. But like I was saying earlier, it's better if it is. So let's take this phrase, let's take exactly what we did, and then go to these strings and see what happens. All the same motions. Now that sounds pretty awful, right? But what would it sound like if we moved it around? So that's a C7 chord, right? But if we move it up here to an E7, we'll have some open strings that are actually in an E7 chord. We'll get a pull off here that will be a minor third, so it's going to have a bluesy sound as well. Let's move it to the final set of 4 strings and do it on an A7 chord. So that sounds pretty cool. I had to make some modifications there, or really just one. But that gives us A7. Those are all the notes of an A7 chord, and then here's a flat 9. So that's a very Phrygian thing, just like we started with. E with an F is equivalent to an A7 with a B flat. A7 flat 9. Now here on the end, since it's an A chord, a low E, we certainly could do that, but that string is occupied with that finger there. So I took this one off and I played A again, and I love that sound. Another thing that you see in flamenco not infrequently, those 2 A's at the same time, or offset. Cool kind of a drone sound there. And I played my middle finger there because that was the finger assigned to that string with the motion I was using. Hours of fun. Let me know in the comments how you do with this. Is this hard for you or is this easy? It really makes you be on your fingertips, so don't forget about that. If you hear this, you're blocking the string, got to get more on your fingertips. And it's not always having to reach around to get that position on the fingertip. You can also move the guitar forward, and we got the angle of our finger with moving the guitar rather than having to wrench our wrist around, which is always a bad idea. So fingertips, and make sure that your pull-off motion, if you're too close to the guitar like this, you're not going to have any space to follow through. So make sure that there's a space right here. You could come over and put a pencil right through here. That gives us some room to make a nice clear pull-off with a nice follow-through motion, like that. If you do have trouble with this phrase, I would go back to basics and start, and it's not really that basic. It is hard, and I realize that. Just do pull-offs, not to open strings, pull-offs only, but to other fingers, okay? So we're gonna go with every pair of fingers that we have. There's 6 possible pairs of fingers in your left hand, 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 3 and 4, 1 and 3, 2 and 4, and then 1 and 4, okay? Choose any of those pairs. That's only 6, so you get 1 day off. Do 1 every day of the week, okay? You don't have to sit around, like I said, and just do 45 minutes of grueling exercises, but do this. This is in every guitar book, any style of music. And work on that nice follow-through motion. Make sure that you're not against the guitar like this, because you don't have any room to make that motion. And just notice, is this finger coming along with that downward pull-off motion? And if it is, the string is going to bend down, and we don't want that, obviously. Keep the string straight. So it is so tricky doing these pull-offs, because we think, oh, in this case, the middle finger is doing a pull-off. That's true, but it's both fingers are involved. One finger's trying to keep the string stable while the other one does that pull-off motion. Now we do it with other pairs. And on and on and on, you get the idea. But that's what we need to be able to do first before we can really tackle this phrase. So get to work on this, or if you're new to all this stuff, check out this video where I teach you how to play just about every technique in the right hand that we need for Spanish guitar, for nylon string guitar, classical, you name it.